Governor Whitmer announced a new free contraceptive program that will be available next month. Now, the program is called Take Control of Your Birth Control. It will allow Michigan families to receive free access to over-the-counter birth control pills, condoms, and family planning educational resources. The items will be given out by community partners and federally qualified health centers. According to the state chief medical executive, the goal is to inform state residents of what resources are available to them.
These can be covered by various forms of insurance, including most private health insurance and something called Plan First, which is a limited Medicaid benefit that offers access not only to these types of family planning resources, but to other types of health access.
The program kicks off in November. Contraceptive items will be distributed until supplies run out.